So, moving right along, my name's Rob Cassidy. I'm not sure if I introduced myself at the start, so I apologise if I didn't. I'm the sales manager here. I've been here for 5.5 years, but luckily for all you out there, you won't have to hear my voice throughout the entire webinar. Grant will be taking over, and he's got a much more charismatic is the word I'm looking for, much more charismatic voice and more interesting to listen to. So Grant, as I said before, is our org charting specialist and has worked with many organisations on ways to help them cleanse their data. So on that point, I'll say au revoir for now and pass you over to Grant.
All right, well, thank you everyone for attending our webinar today. So just I suppose just a little bit about my previous history. So as Rob mentioned, I've been with Navigo working in the HR technology space for the last 8 months, but I actually come from the CAD industry. So when comparing the CAD industry and HR industry, chalk and cheese when it comes to technology. The CAD industry, if you're not using the latest design technology, you will fall behind. But so far in my experience, the HR industry seems to be a little bit more reluctant to adopt technology for managing their workforce. And also too, in my experience with meeting and talking to customers since joining Navigo, a topic that does come up quite often is regarding issues dealing with dirty data, especially when customers have older HR systems. So the purpose of today is to look at this area and hopefully to give you some practical ways to deal with dirty data, no matter what system you're currently working with. So why cleanse dirty data? So the first reason why you may want to look at cleansing data is if you're implementing a new HR system or if you're merging HR systems. So when you're about to swap and replace a new HR payroll system or move to a new talent management system, having that understanding of what is clean and what is dirty in your old system really impacts the speed of moving to the new system. Usually this is where a lot of effort goes into cleaning up the data, such as dealing with old records before migration. This could also have an impact on licensing. So if your new system has a licensing model based on the amount of records you import, importing old records could potentially mean higher licensing costs. Next point is reporting or tracking key performance indicators better. So most HR leaders and line managers across your organisation will have a few key metrics or key performance indicators they use as measurements crucial for managing their workforce. You cannot improve what you cannot measure. So the quality of this information is important to make sure that the metrics you are looking at are accurate. And lastly, moving into strategic HR and workforce analytics using metrics that need to be accurate and up to date. So recently tools, especially over the last 5 years or so, tools have become available that give you the ability to solve or to work out compelling insights into your business using predictive analytics. So predictive analytics is something that we see used very widely in the consumer market, such as predictive online advertising where you are targeted specifically based on your search history or on your purchasing history, for example. But once again, these tools require accurate data to enable them to produce these predictive analytics. And lastly, reducing the time HR spends on manual manipulation. So accurate data will reduce time spent on rework. So a good example of this is in payroll. Incorrect payroll tax codes can produce a whole set of issues. The bad setup of codes against the position or the employee, where you are using the wrong codes, can have a real problem when you generate payment summaries and you need to reconcile that back to the right buckets of pay codes. So what causes dirty data? So the first thing could be the source of truth. What is your source of truth? So the easiest way to break your data is to have it spread across multiple systems. So the issue is especially problematic when payroll sits outside of HR. So using one system for payroll and HR does make source of truth management a lot easier. But if you do have a separate payroll and HR system, questions may start to arise around what is the master set of employee data and who is the slave. So splitting information over multiple systems or even spreadsheets can be a problem when managing this information or keeping this data clean. Missing info can be a common issue, especially if HR have not been collecting particular pieces of data. And then all of a sudden, if you want to create a report based on this information, it would mean you would need to retrospectively obtain this information. So an example of this is occupancy information, where people are on temporary positions where they have not been updated in the system, or they have been updated but not put back in their old role. So keeping this information up to date can be a challenge for some organisations. And also inaccurate data. So a lot of examples we see around this is when comparing full-time equivalents versus headcount. So these abnormalities are a common issue and they can cause problems with budgeting and reporting. Also, broken hierarchy. So broken hierarchy effectively equals broken workflow. So with your business constantly changing, the hierarchy changes with employees changing occupancies and having different temporary positions. So this can be a challenge keeping up with these changes, especially if a line manager leaves. How are the subordinates managed? You may also experience issues with managing leave accrual as an example, as a direct result of this broken hierarchy. And lastly, code management. So a lot of common HR systems are very code heavy, whether that is lookup codes such as gender and location, through to payroll codes, leave accrual codes, GL codes, the list just goes on and on. And then there is the relationship between those codes, or code rules. So there is a whole relationship and ecosystem around these codes. So typically what happens is that there are naming conventions using those codes which over time can get broken or antiquated. New codes get created, old codes get decommissioned, but do not get end-dated, for an example. This can really create issues managing these codes. So as new HRIS administrators join your organisation, they do not know the historic decisions or legacy configurations that have been put in place, which can cause real issues. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have a quick poll. So what is your biggest reason for cleaning your data? So we'll just give a minute or so for everyone to respond to that. And we'll see if our guess comes to fruition.
Inaccurate reports are certainly leading the way at the moment. Oh, they've exceeded 50%. Race is on. Can anyone overtake inaccurate reports? No.
Okay, we'll just give that another 30 seconds or so.
Come on, too many internal HR processes. You can do it.
Okay. Let's have a look at the results there. All right, so inaccurate reports seems to have won the day there. So my guess was actually too many internal HR process errors. So that's very interesting. Okay, so thank you for participating in that poll. So let's have a look at a few practical steps to cleanse your data. Okay, so first of all, work out the root cause. So Band-Aids can be a waste of time. Sorry, I'll just wait for the slides to catch up there. So work out the root cause. Band-aids can be a bit of a waste of time, so always aim to fix the root cause so that the problem does not come up again. Also try and be proactive rather than reactive. So for example, set a process around generating codes. One thing you can do is ask yourself the 5 whys to determine the root cause. So if you have not heard of the 5 whys, I would encourage you to Google it, as this is a very good analytic process to use. Next thing is to use alarms to easily identify dirt. So imagine being asked to proofread and rectify mistakes in a document. How much easier would this be if all of the issues you're looking for are already highlighted? So this is exactly the same with your HR data. Once you have these alarms set up, schedule reviews, and if possible, set up processes for dealing with these alarms when they occur. Also, visualize and socialize. So turn the data you regularly look at into something that you'd actually like to look at. How many times have you gone cross-eyed looking at endless spreadsheets? So turning your data into a format that is a bit easier on the eye can go a long way towards making sure your data cleansing processes are actually being used. Also, put it out to the right people, share it. Rather than sending spreadsheets around, send out a link to a visual of their relevant data in an easy to understand format, for example an org chart. And lastly, focus on the data that matters first. Make sure that you work on the data that matters immediately and find out what works, and then you can use these processes to cleanse the not so critical data. So a couple of tools that we can use to assist with this process. So we have existing tools, spreadsheets, your maybe modules within your HRIS. So with a lot of things, Excel can be very handy if you are efficient with formulas and conditional formatting, although there can sometimes be a bit of an issue with hardware performance when computing formulas on very large data sets. And also security can be an issue. Visualization tools such as graphs and org charts. So once again, when the data is easy to look at, it will always be a lot easier to work with. And then we also have analytics, data, and workforce reports. So these are visualization tools, but they are tools that make you focus on the metrics and information that really matter. So this can give you a good idea of the priority of the information you are analyzing. So let's have a look at an example of data cleansing with visualization. So what we'll do is we'll go through 3 examples today, and we'll be using the Planning at Work org charting tool to show you these examples. So the first one there, highlighting incomplete performance information. We'll also have a look at dealing with broken position hierarchy or orphans, and the last one, managing visual alarms. So using an org charting tool like Planning at Work, we can easily visualize and identify where we may have issues with our data or where data may be missing. In this example, we are looking for anyone within our organization where either the performance or potential is showing a 0 level, indicating we have an issue with the information we are importing from our source of truth. One way we can deal with this is to create smart lists to quickly identify where these issues are within our organization. To create a smart list, we need to add rules. So in this particular instance, we are looking for all employees that have a performance or potential level of 0, and we can then save this list. As we can see in this example, we have 3 employees who have appeared on this list that we will need to deal with. Also notice the vacant positions that have appeared on this list, as they have no performance or potential data. So when your source of truth has been rectified and the data has been refreshed in Planning at Work, you will find the smart list will also be updated to reflect the correction. So we can save this list to check on a scheduled basis to ensure swift rectification if required. I'm very sorry, it looks like we're having maybe a little bit of a performance issue with the video today, so it may not have actually caught up with what I was saying, so I apologise there. Let's try the next one.
I think our internet connection might have had a glass of gin with black pepper. Maybe.
Okay, so let's have a look at how Planning at Work can assist with managing orphans. So firstly, what is an orphan? An orphan is an employee that for some reason has fallen out of the organisation hierarchy, usually due to the reports to field in your source of truth being incorrect or missing altogether. So a common reason why orphans will appear is because a manager has left and their subordinates no longer report to anyone. So Planning at Work can very quickly and easily identify orphans within your source of truth. In fact, Planning at Work has an orphans option as one of the default lists available. When we identify orphans, a very handy tool to reintroduce orphans back into the hierarchy is the Plan and Model module. In this example, we've identified three orphans in the operations area that we want to reintroduce back into the organisation hierarchy. So not only do we want to validate this visually, but we also want to export this into Excel so that we have an accurate list of the correct reports for these employees ready to update our source of truth. Once we have opened the Plan and Model module, we can name this plan. In this case, we are calling the plan Operations Orphans. Once this is done, we then need to navigate through our org chart to find the correct manager or managers for these orphans. If we have multiple orphans reporting to the same manager, as we do in this example, we can select multiple orphans and then it is a simple drag and drop to reintroduce these orphans back into the hierarchy. Once this has been visually validated, we can now export this new hierarchy into Excel to capture the correct reports to information for these employees. So when exporting this updated report to Excel, we can select which fields we want to include on the spreadsheet as part of the export process. So in this example, we will remove the non-relevant fields, but we'll include the position ID and reports to fields. Once this has been exported to Excel, we are now ready to make the required changes to the source of truth. Once the source of truth has been updated and the Planning at Work data has been refreshed, these employees will no longer appear on our orphans list. So, managing visual alarms. So Planning at Work offers conditional formatting functionality, which can be used to visually identify potential issues in our HR data. We may just have to wait until our internet connection catches up. Here we go. All right, so in this example, we have set up an employment type view, which helps us quickly identify part-timers, full-timers, contractors, and casual staff. So a common issue when dealing with different employment types is having discrepancies between the employment type and the full-time equivalent. So in this example, we have used conditional formatting to identify where full-time equivalent equals 1, but the employment type is listed as part-time. So in this example, we can see Jessica Brando has this issue as her record has a broken red border as a visual alarm. So once again, we can use our smart list as a tool to identify these issues. I'm going to create the smart list, and the first rule I will apply is that the employment type equals part-time. And the second rule I will apply is that the full-time equivalent equals 1. So as long as we follow both of these rules, we can quickly identify and produce a list of these incorrect records. In this data set, we're lucky we only have the one record which requires attention, but if we have a large list of incorrect records, producing this list will make it much easier and a much easier task of rectifying in our source of truth. So as in previous examples, this list can be saved and is dynamic, so it will update as your source of truth data is cleansed and refreshed. And you may also want to schedule checking these lists to keep your data cleansed. So there's a couple of examples how we can use a visualization tool to assist with identifying and visualizing these issues. Okay, so what we'll do now is let's have a look at a few key takeaways that we would like for you to have a think about after this webinar today. So the first key takeaway is to identify and fix the root cause. So stop putting out spot fires, identify the root cause and fix it. And also have a look at how you can apply the 5 whys to this process. So the next takeaway is to use visualization tools to quickly and easily highlight and fix bad data. So a mixture of data that is easy on the eye and that incorporates visual alarms is highly recommended. And the last takeaway today, don't do it alone. Put the data in clear view and make it everyone's responsibility to incrementally improve it. There is a lot of elements in your workforce information that you can get your entire organisation to assist with validating and correcting, especially if they are viewing this information in a self-service type application, or an org chart is also a great tool for this. So allow employees to send proposed changes back to HR, who can then validate this and then update your source of truth if required. So this will give you a constant feedback loop to help improve your data. Many eyes will always be better than a few. All right, so thank you very much for attending the webinar today. So what we might do now is just take a few quick questions, if anyone has any, or we'll also have a look to see if we've had any questions during the course of the webinar today.
All right. Now, if you've got any questions, just type them in the question box there or raise your hand. If you raise your hand, we can unmute you so you can ask a question. So I do have a question here. First one, can you create any other reports other than the examples shown today? Grant, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so yes, absolutely is the short answer to that. So really the reports that you can create in Planning at Work are really only limited by the fields that you're importing into Planning at Work. So when you create the rules, so Planning at Work is smart enough to recognize what fields you're actually working with, whether it's a value or what have you. So it means that you can create, you can be very creative in terms of the different reports that you create based on the fields that you're working with. And also too, I will stress that you can save as many reports as you want to, which are all dynamic. So as data changes within your source of truth and it's refreshed in Planning at Work, then those lists will also update to reflect those changes.
Okay, so we've got another question here from Mia. Position IDs, is that something generated through Planning at Work, or are IDs generated via existing HRIS and migrated through to Planning at Work?
Okay, so Planning at Work is really an HRIS visualizer, so you would want your position IDs, best practice would be to have them generated in your HRIS and then import that information into Planning at Work to visualize.
Okay, we've got another one here from Stuart. He just wants to know some details about the costs for the Planning at Work tool. Is it licensed per user or per employee?
So the licensing model works on how many records you're importing into planning at work. But look, what I'll do is I'll come back to you and probably answer that question a bit more detail for you after the webinar, if that's okay.
Yeah, so just to further elaborate on that, it is based on a number of records, so you have different license sizes and brackets that are priced accordingly. So I've got another question here from Ross. How hard is it to import data into planning at work and then to visualize it?
Okay, so the import process is fairly easy. With planning at work, you need to generate a CSV file, which is then uploaded into planning at work via SFTP, or Secure File Transfer Protocol. So planning at work, and also with Org Plus, which is the desktop version of planning at work, that will accept any flat file. So to create a hierarchy or an org chart to begin with, the two compulsory fields that you need for that is the equivalent of a position ID field and a position reports to field. So that will create the hierarchy to begin with, but then obviously you can import as many fields as you want from your source of truth to be able to visualize those in different ways as well.
Okay, Amir's come back. Any compatibility with MS Visio? Ouch.
Yes, ouch. So this is a very good alternative to Visio. Really, unless you're using Visio as your source of truth, which I don't think anyone would be or should be, no, it is actually an alternative tool to Visio.
Jan, can you use this tool for generating and maintaining structure org charts using customized templates? Short answer is, sorry, Grant, I'll jump in on that one. Short answer is you can, but it's not ideal. It's not what it's designed for. So, yeah, the purpose of planning at work is for visualizing your source of truth and building org charts, and you can use the planner model module to create and change your structures and but in terms of actually generating org charts from scratch and then maintaining them, it's not really what it's designed for.
Yeah, it's really designed to link to your or import information from your HRIS. Just on that as well, it is also possible to automate the data refreshes from your source of truth to planning at work as well. So if you've got a fairly dynamic organisation, what a lot of our customers will do is that they will schedule the data refresh to happen at the end of every working day, so that when they come in the next morning, they're always looking at up-to-date information. And it also too means that everyone across the organisation that has access to planning at work is looking at the same information, which is also quite an important part as well.
All right, so 3 more questions. We've got a lot of questions coming through, but we'll limit to 3 more just to finish up. From Kami, can you import data from multiple systems, e.g. HRIS and payroll, where payroll uses the same unique ID as the HRIS but has extra fields?
Yes, you certainly can. So there's a couple of ways that you can deal with that. The first way is to, if you want to look at all of the information together on the one org chart, then you would need to merge the data before it's imported into planning at work. Or the other way that you can handle that is you can actually have different domains, which a domain in planning at work is essentially either a data source or a different hierarchy within the same data source. But the only, I suppose the only thing that you need to think about with the second option is that you wouldn't be looking at all of the information in the same org chart.
Okay, so we've got a question here from Stuart. I presume we can use custom objects and relationships?
Yes, you certainly can. what I'll do as well is I'll come back to you there, Stuart, and you probably would like to elaborate on that, so we can have a discussion about that offline.
And the last one here from Luke, any current clients using automated feeds from SuccessFactors or SAP?
Yes, absolutely.
And we're happy to give you a list of those. Luke can elaborate further on that. All right, well, that's it for today. Thank you all for coming along. I hope you got some takeaways from today and not just the burger and chips that was in the slide. I'm going to go away now and have a glass of gin with black pepper, and we'll catch up with you in the next webinar.
Yeah, look, thank you very much for attending today, and not only that, for participating. It's always appreciated when we get some good feedback and some good questions coming through. So thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you all at the next one.